Buy the house, put my name on half, or it's over. That is what my fiancée told me over a plate of cold rigatoni on a Tuesday night while my dog whined at the back door and the neighbor's wind chime clicked like a metronome to my heartbeat. I took off the ring she gave me and set it on the countertop between a jar of marinara and her phone. "If this ends," I said, "it ends because you turned love into a receipt." A month ago, she was asking about invitation fonts. Tonight, she gave me an ultimatum. Here is the ugly truth. We both walked into that conversation thinking we were reasonable. Only one of us walked out with a packed suitcase. You want the quick and dirty? I am male, 28 years old. She is female, 37 years old. We have been together for 2 years. She moved into my place 6 months ago. I inherited more money than I know what to do with 3 years back. Life-changing, but not movie-level flashy. I live below my means, teach evening classes at a community arts center, and put the rest into a small nonprofit that buys school supplies for kids who show up with empty backpacks. Most months, I pay the mortgage, the utilities, and the small stuff, like the $12 candles I have no business buying, but always do. She earns very good money for a sales lead, around $10,000 a month, and has about $100,000 saved. When we got engaged a month ago, I told her I wanted separate finances, a proportional split of shared expenses, a joint account for bills, and a prenup. She wanted a bigger house with a separate wing for her mother, eventually, which I was willing to consider if we did the math together. I did not realize that together meant I pay, we both own. I also did not realize that a ring can slide off like a guillotine. Ultimatums aren't love, they're invoices. If you think I am exaggerating, stay with me. The ending is messy, but it makes sense. And yes, someone ends up sleeping in the guest room. Her name is Tessa, 37 years old, whip-smart, sharp eyeliner, always smells like cardamom and office air conditioning. The first night we met, I was painting set pieces for a neighborhood theater, and she dropped off a sponsorship check from her company. We ate tacos in the half-lit auditorium while a leaf blower roared outside like a plane trying to land in the parking lot. She laughed at my bad nacho joke. I thought, here is a woman who can sell ice to penguins and still make them feel respected. When she moved into my place, a small, sunlit 2-bedroom with creaky pine floors, I offered to keep covering the utilities. She took groceries. We split dates and trips 50-50 because that felt fair. Then came the engagement. The ring was a simple emerald cut she picked herself after a tipsy stroll through downtown, a night that smelled like rain and street pretzels. The next morning, she made coffee and said we should start looking at bigger houses because your place is adorable but not forever, babe. I agreed about the adorable part. I do not want forever with a water heater from 1997. Then we opened the spreadsheet. I told her about the inheritance income, roughly $40,000 a month from investments and projects, structured so it lasts. I talked about the nonprofit, the carved-out funds for it, the plan to make the money stretch. Her face paused. Not shock, more like a browser loading too many tabs. Then, if you have that kind of income, why are we nickel and diming groceries? Because, I said, money that grows gets guarded. Because fairness is not 50-50. It is proportional. Because if we buy a house, you own the part you pay for, and I own the part I pay for. Her reply? Equal partners means equal ownership. My stomach did that elevator drop. Equal contribution equals equal ownership, I corrected. She twirled her spoon in the coffee like she was stirring a storm and said we could keep debating, or I could make the loving choice. The loving choice comes with deed paperwork, apparently. I floated a compromise, a joint account for sustaining the life we actually live, the dog food, the water bill, the boring stuff, and we each contribute in proportion to our incomes. Her $10,000 a month means she puts in a reasonable slice. My investments cover the rest. For the house, we buy when we are both ready, with clear equity lines. If and when her mother needs to move in, we plan thoughtfully, Maybe a separate small unit on the property if we can afford it. I said I was open to it. I even showed her sketches with a sunroom because her mom loves morning light for knitting and telenovelas. What I got back was a new definition of equality. I buy the house outright, we list both our names on the title as 50-50, and then she would feel it is truly ours. Also, prenup is fine as long as the prenup says the house is split in half no matter who paid for it. Wait, I said, you want me to fund 100% of the purchase and give you 50% equity on day one? She did that little shrug that looks like a smile if you are not paying attention. That is what partners do, she said. I was looking at a woman I loved and suddenly felt like a walking ATM with a heartbeat. It was not always like this. Before the engagement, if I covered dinner spontaneously, she insisted on picking up the next one. I have a jar of ferry ticket stubs and museum receipts to prove how much fun we had splitting the world. I kept telling myself that she was thinking about security because she cared about building a life with me. People get weird around money. People get scared. I get it. She is 9 years older. Her mother's health has had blips, and Tessa's pride is welded to being the adult in the room. But the adult in the room was asking for a blank check dressed up as romance. That night, we argued until the pasta went stiff. The dog retreated under the table with a rubber carrot. I said, a prenup is non-negotiable. She said, a house in both our names is non-negotiable. We stared at each other like two stubborn chess pieces. She picked the queen. I picked the king. Neither of us chose to move. What would you have done in my place? The ultimatum did not arrive with fireworks. It came folded into a bowl of lemon sorbet like a fortune from a mean cookie. Final offer, she said, licking the spoon. You buy the house, we own 50-50. I will sign the prenup. Take it or leave it. The freezer hummed. Somewhere outside, someone revved a motorcycle, the sound fading like a warning turning the corner. I asked if leave it meant she would end the engagement. She hesitated the way a person hesitates at a crosswalk, calculating the distance. Yes, she said, if you say no, we are done. He didn't propose. He negotiated a merger. I walked to the sink, ran cold water, and felt every year of those 3 years since the inheritance. People act like money is a magic fix. It is a magnifier. It makes you more of what you are. My uncle used to say, rich jerks become shinier jerks. Kind people tip better. I used to think Tessa fell into the second category. That night, I realized she was trying on the first one like a coat that fit too well. I cannot do that, I told her. I will not. She stared, then scoff-laughed. You are throwing away our future because you want to win an argument about fairness? She followed me down the hallway, past the framed Polaroid of us on a Ferris wheel, past the dog's half-chewed octopus. You would rather protect a pile of money than protect us? You are the one who put a price on us, I said. You turned love into equity. She stomped to the bedroom, grabbed her purse, then came back and flung the purse on the couch. Fine, she said, voice thin with fury. Leave it. I slid the ring off. It made a sound when it hit the granite, metal on stone, a clean, tiny bell. She gasped like I had slapped her. And then, because she is also human and scared and not a villain in a cartoon, she cried. I did not want to break up, she said later through the guest room door. I wanted you to choose me. That is the thing about ultimatums. You are begging the other person to fold. You are not asking a question. You are writing a script for them. And when they do not read your lines, you realize you were imposing a theater, not building a home. The next morning, the house smelled like stale coffee and lavender laundry detergent. My sister Lena came by with bagels and her habit of narrating crisis like a sports commentator. He gave her an out, she said between bites, and she fumbled on the 10-yard line. Lena is 31 years old, a nurse who does night shifts and collects ceramic frogs. She has seen more urgency at 3 in the morning than most people see in a lifetime. She poked around my kitchen, found the ring, and whistled. "Big choice," she said, placing it in a teacup like it was radioactive. Tessa texted me, "We need to talk. I did not mean it. Let us reset." I typed and erased. I looked at the hydrangeas flopping in a pitcher on the windowsill, petals bruising from yesterday's heat. I thought about Tessa's mother, about the spare room we could have turned into a studio apartment with a small deck and wind chimes. I thought about how she had moved in and, for a while, learned my coffee routine, the exact second the toast pops, the way I always forget the oven mitt. Is loyalty to family more important than self-respect? It is not the sexiest question, but it matters here. Tessa's push for the house, underneath it, was fear about her mother. She grew up as the eldest daughter in a family that treats daughters like emergency plans. Tessa worries about care homes, the kind where the hallway smells like disinfectant and lemon candy, and everyone stops visiting by the third week. In her mind, a bigger house was not greed, it was a promise. In my mind, her demand for instant equity was not security, it was a trap. My friend Marcus came by next. He is 30 years old, works in marketing, and always has a baseball cap on backward because he thinks time is reversible. He listened, nodding the way only a friend who wants you to be your bravest self nods. "Man, she showed you her blueprint," he said. "Believe the blueprint." He grabbed a slice of cinnamon bread, the sugar rubbing off on his thumb like chalk. Boundaries are healthy. Ultimatums are manipulation dressed for church. "Do you think I'll regret this later?" he asked softly, then smirked. "You are the one who asks the questions, not me." But the question echoed in my head anyway. Midway through the week, everything tilted again. Tessa's coworker, Priya, texted me asking if I was okay. I said I was fine. She said Tessa had called in sick. Then, because offices are gossip factories with laptops, Priya told me something she probably should not have. Tessa had been talking for months about getting out of rentals forever. Even though she did not rent, she lived with me. Priya mentioned that Tessa had even asked around about fast-tracking a homestead declaration, which is a legal thing I had never Googled before. I called Tessa's father. We are not close, but he is gentle, a retired electrician with hands like bookends. He did not pick sides. He said Tessa had watched her mother nurse her grandmother at home and vowed never to put a parent in a facility. He asked me to think about Tessa's fear. He also asked me if I had thought about my own fear. "You guard your money like it is a child," he said, not unkindly. "Sometimes that is love. Sometimes that is loneliness." That evening, I found a folder under the bed while pulling out Tessa's overnight bag. Inside was a rough budget sheet she had printed. New house, $1.6 million. Monthly costs, $8,500. Equity split, 50-50. On the next page, possible life changes. Children, career change, mom moves in within 2 years. And then, circled twice in black pen, if we wait, we will never do it. My throat tightened. The folder was not a plot, it was a plan. Hers, not ours. The scary part was not the ambition. It was the assumption that I would be the engine and she would be the passenger with a steering wheel. I put the folder back. The dog scratched at the door, impatient to chase a squirrel that did not want to be chased. I opened the door. The air smelled like cut grass and grilled onions drifting from the neighbors. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt a grief shaped like a house we had not bought. "Am I wrong for not giving in?" I asked the quiet room, which is the kind of question you ask when you are staring at the ceiling fan and hoping it will set the world straight. By Friday, the fighting had become routines. Same steps, same soundtrack. Tessa promised the ultimatum had been a bluff. I did not mean it. I was scared. I wanted to know you would choose me. I told her choosing her could not mean unchoosing myself. She tried a new approach. "Put my name on the deed with 25%. We will adjust later." I said we would adjust only if she contributed 25% of the down payment and expenses from her money, not mine. We are a team, she said, voice pinched. Teams share wins, I said. Teams also share costs, I said. We took a walk at dusk, because walking argues better than sitting. The sky was a smear of pink over the corner bodega that sells $3 empanadas and rabbit-shaped planters. She squeezed my hand as if to wring a different answer from it. Everyone at my age is settling down, she said. I do not want to rent the rest of my life. You are not renting, I said gently. You live with me, and we can create a plan that respects what we each bring. She stopped at the alley where the mural of the giant hummingbird watches everything. I cannot marry someone who sees me as a liability, she said. I don't, I said. I see your needs, but I also see mine. We returned to the kitchen. She poured wine. I drank water because my stomach was already a fishbowl of acid. She set down her glass, stared at the ring in the teacup like it was a moon rock. You embarrassed me, she said. You turned a private discussion into a breakup. I told her that the breakup had arrived the moment she brought in a hostage negotiation. She shook her head. No, you wanted the power. You want to hold the money over me. Tessa is not greedy by nature. She tips baristas, brings soup to sick neighbors, Venmos her interns for Ubers. But people are not what they do in small moments. They are what they repeat under pressure. Under pressure, Tessa sold me a fantasy about equality that hid a transfer of control. Is betrayal always the end of a relationship? I asked Lena on the phone later. She said this was not betrayal like cheating. No one crept around. But it was betrayal of trust. If she is willing to twist your arm now, Lena said, she will twist it again when there are toddlers and PTA meetings. Can betrayal ever be justified? I asked, hating myself for needing to ask. Not when it is about control, she said. I told her I hated how transactional I sounded, like a man counting beans behind a bank window. You are not counting beans, she said. You are counting respect. On Sunday, we tried one last time. I made pancakes with too much vanilla. Tessa cooked bacon, the kind that splatters and leaves tiny burn freckles on your wrist. We ate at the little table by the window where you can see the splinter in the sill that looks like a fish. For 10 minutes, it felt like we could choose nice. Then she said, I talked to a lawyer. She looked at me like a cat bringing a bird it did not kill. He said we could do a prenup that keeps your investments separate, but if we buy the house while married, community property law will handle the rest. I blinked. We do not live in a community property state, I said. She flushed. Fine, then we write that the house is split 50-50, but you keep the rest. I set down the fork. You asked a lawyer how to get half my house before we even buy it? She flinched. I asked a lawyer how we could both feel safe. You asked a lawyer how you could feel safe, I said. She wrapped her arms around herself. I am almost 40, she said quietly. I want to build. I want to be chosen. I have carried people my whole life. I am tired. She looked so small then, like a person on a sidewalk holding a cardboard sign that says some version of please. I wanted to say yes just to erase that look. Come with me, she said, the words trembling. Let us look at a list of houses. We can drive, drink gas station coffee, and dream. We can figure the rest out later. I could see it, the long road, the Zillow tabs, the pine smell of staged homes, the giddy whispering about nursery corners, even though we had not decided if we wanted kids. I could also see the legal battle 3 years later when feelings curdled, the way courts turned love into arithmetic. I stood up. Tessa, I said, I will not sign away my caution. I will not buy you a house you have not earned a share of. That is not love. That is surrender. She stared at me for a long minute, then said, Then it is over. She thought I would fold. I did not. There is the dramatic version, the ring, the door slam, the neighbor's dog barking like it wants a piece of the action. Then there is the boring version where someone packs sweaters into a grocery bag while someone else orders a rideshare. Tessa took the guest room that night, and I took the quiet, which throbbed. I did not sleep. The refrigerator hummed on its own little schedule. Morning crept in with the smell of rain on asphalt and the sound of a garbage truck complaining down the block. Tessa left around 9 with 2 suitcases, 1 plant, and the electric kettle she bought because mine looks like a tin can. She looked at me in the doorway, eyes rimmed red but steady. "I did not want this," she said. "I wanted you." "I wanted you too," I said. "I still do. I just cannot want a version of you that requires me to disappear." She nodded once, then left the ring in the teacup and the spare key on the console table. The click of the door echoed. I called my dad. He is not a wealthy man, but he is unflappable. "You did not sabotage anything," he said. "She did when she made your yes a test of your worth." He told me to change the smart lock code and to breathe. He told me to remember who I am. I walked the dog past the bakery that dusts sugar on everything like it is holy water. I bought a croissant. I ate it in the rain under the awning. Butter tastes different when your life just spun. Back home, I texted Tessa. "I hope your mother is okay. I mean that." She did not respond, which is fair. People should not be forced to be gracious during heartbreak. I opened the windows, the house filled with the smell of wet lilac. "Do you think honesty was the best choice here?" I whispered to the empty kitchen, feeling the answer before the words. "You wanted the ending. Here it is." 2 weeks later, Tessa's father dropped off her mail and a Tupperware of arroz con pollo from her mother for health. He stood on the porch, hands in jacket pockets, and said he was sorry it ended like this. I told him I was too. He said Tessa would take a while to forgive me, but that one day she might thank me for not letting her become the kind of person who gets her way by threatening loss. I said I did not need thanks, just peace. He nodded, touched the brim of a hat he was not wearing, and left. My nonprofit had a school supply drop the next Saturday. The gym smelled like rubber balls and pencil shavings. A little boy picked a neon green notebook and said, "This one looks fast." I thought about how the life I want is not luxurious. It is precise. It is a life where I can look at myself in the mirror and not see a coward or a tyrant. Tessa taught me, in her way, how fragile fairness is. I changed some things. I called a lawyer and wrote a prenup template for the future that is simple. What we bring in stays ours. What we build together is ours. I added a clause about caretaking plans, because love is not just kisses. It is logistics. I also wrote down the questions I want to ask the next person before rings get involved. How do you see money? What does ours mean to you? What does home mean? If your parent needs help, what does that look like? And if I say no to a demand, will you hear it as a boundary or as a betrayal? Is being direct always better than being polite? The voice in my head asked, sounding suspiciously like Lena after a third espresso. Maybe not always. But when someone ties a rope around your life and calls it love, the kindest thing you can do is untie it before you suffocate. Here is the line that will probably sound cruel and simple, but it is where I landed. She did not want a partner. She wanted a solution. And I have decided I am not solving anyone ever again. And that is when I realized she wanted a lifestyle, not a life with me.